With Daredevil Born Again on the horizon, the MCU is set to introduce a new hero, White Tiger. But who is he, and how does his story connect to the larger Marvel universe? Most people are familiar with White Tiger as a female character. However, in Daredevil Born Again, White Tiger is male. So, let's start by explaining why this version of White Tiger is a man. In the comics, White Tiger's name is Ava Ayala. But the version we'll see now is her older brother, Hector Ayala. In fact, Hector was the original White Tiger. But since most people recognize Ava as White Tiger, Hector's story has been somewhat forgotten. Now, let's talk about how Hector became White Tiger. Hector Ayala is of Latin American descent. After DC's Blue Beetle, he is the second Latin American superhero. While studying at a university in New York, Hector was walking through an alley when he found 3 jade amulets. These amulets featured a tiger's head and 2 tiger paws. At that time, he had no idea where these amulets came from or what they were. When Hector combined and wore all 3 amulets, he transformed into White Tiger. Along with the transformation, he also gained superpowers. His abilities are similar to Spider-Man's, including enhanced strength, speed, stamina, and durability, all at a superhuman level. Like Spider-Man's Spider Sense, he has a Tiger Sense. While it's not as intense as Spider Sense, it gives him heightened senses similar to a tiger, including enhanced smell and hearing. Because of this, he can sense when enemies are approaching or attacking. While he doesn't have a healing factor like Wolverine, he can use the amulet to heal wounds by placing it on the injured area. Additionally, he is highly skilled in multiple martial arts. One major drawback is that when Hector transforms into White Tiger, he loses his conscious awareness. The moment he put on the amulets and became White Tiger, he unknowingly ended up in the middle of a gang causing trouble. After fighting and taking down all the gang members, a young boy from the gang aimed a gun at White Tiger. While White Tiger was trying to convince the boy to change his ways, a security officer hit him from behind with a baton. Unfortunately, the attack went too far and the boy died. Enraged, White Tiger lashed out and attacked the security officer. Then, in a nearby alley, he suddenly transformed back into Hector. The next morning, the police arrived at Hector's place after finding his fingerprints at the crime scene. As mentioned earlier, since he had no conscious awareness while being White Tiger, he had no memory of what happened. Panicked and terrified, he jumped out of the window, immediately triggering his transformation into White Tiger. Since White Tiger escaped, the police started hunting down both Hector and White Tiger, treating them as 2 separate individuals. Later, on a rooftop, White Tiger was ambushed by Prowler. This Prowler is not Miles Morales' uncle from Spider-Man, but a different person entirely. Prowler had been mentoring the young gang member who was killed by the security officer's attack. Believing that White Tiger was responsible for his student's death, he came seeking revenge. White Tiger tried to explain that he wasn't responsible for the death, but the fight with Prowler broke out anyway. Eventually, after learning the truth, Prowler let him go. The security officer who was truly responsible for the young man's death eventually confessed, clearing both Hector and White Tiger of any wrongdoing. Later, while reading the newspaper, Hector noticed that the amulet worn by White Tiger in a news photo was identical to his own. That's when he realized he was White Tiger. From then on, White Tiger embarked on a long journey as a superhero, experiencing many adventures and challenges. One day, a villain exposes that White Tiger is actually Hector. As a result, his family was tragically murdered. Devastated by these events, Hector stepped away from being White Tiger for a while. However, after a few months, he eventually returned. But we won't go into all those details here. As always, the MCU will introduce White Tiger in its own way. However, the actor playing Hector, Camar de los Reyes, sadly passed away after filming the series. Because of this, Hector's future in the MCU is now uncertain. They could recast the role, or, like Black Panther, they might acknowledge his passing in the MCU and introduce his sister or niece if needed. Since both of them have already taken up the White Tiger role in the comics, it would be an easy transition. Also, in the comics, Hector has died as well. At one point, Hector was accused of murder and put on trial. He didn't actually commit the murder, and although his lawyer, Daredevil, Matt Murdock, did his best to defend him, Hector was still convicted of the crime. Already struggling with a dual identity, Hector snapped at that moment and escaped from the courthouse. As a result, the police shot and killed Hector outside the courthouse, treating him as a fugitive. Now, let's explain the origins of these amulets. These are called the Amulets of Power. These 3 amulets were created in a hidden city called Kunlun. Kunlun is the same place where Iron Fist was trained, a mystical city that exists in another dimension connected to Earth. In the Marvel Universe, there exists a deity known as the Tiger God. Just like the Panther God who gifted Wakanda the heart-shaped herb, the Tiger God is lesser-known deity. When the Tiger God needs to assist humans, it possesses a chosen individual to act as its avatar. To make this possible, its followers created the 3 Amulets of Power. Anyone who wears the amulets becomes the avatar of the Tiger God. Over generations, these amulets were passed down to various avatars until they ended up with a man named Master Key. Instead of using them, he kept them hidden. One day, ninjas attacked him, and with his dying breath, he passed the amulets on to his most skilled student, Lin Sun. Lin Sun wore the Jade Tiger Head amulet himself and gave the two claw-shaped amulets to his two martial artist friends. Together, the three of them became the Sons of the Tiger, wielding the power of the Tiger God. They fought together for a long time, but eventually, the Sons of the Tiger disbanded. They abandoned the amulets, leaving them behind in an alleyway. That's when Hector found them, leading to him becoming White Tiger. When he passed away, the amulets were passed down to his nieces and sisters, continuing the legacy of White Tiger. As for who will take up the White Tiger mantle in the MCU, we'll have to wait and see. So that's all for today. See you in the next one, brothers. Have a beautiful day.